Hello everyone, welcome to Community Force webinar. My name is Mehreen Mirza. I am going to facilitate this webinar and will be answering any of your questions during the Q&A break. Okay, we are waiting for the other attendees to join. So while we wait for everyone else to join, let us show you how you can use this webinar to ask questions and access the handouts. As you can see, there is a right panel on the right-hand side of your screen with an arrow. Please use that arrow that is represented in an orange box to collapse or open the panel. You can also type in your questions in the question area in that very same panel and click on send or enter. We will receive your questions and answer them by typing them in or verbally during the Q&A break. If we miss answering any of your questions, we will send you a response via email after this webinar. On the same panel, you can also see a copy of today's presentation as handouts. Please click on the PDF copy by clicking on the title of the handout. As shown here, this handout contains the links to individual help guides, knowledge-based articles, training videos, etc. for all the topics that we are covering today. Also, all of you have been put on mute in order to avoid any confusion during this presentation. Let's see how many of you have joined. Okay, all right. Okay. Since most of you have joined, let us start with the brief of this training webinar. The topic for today is application rollover for the one-to-one application process. That is one application associated with one single fund. We have with us amazing Christine Smith, who will be our trainer for today and will go over all the areas under this topic. The duration of this webinar is 1 hour. Let me pass over the mic to Christine to start the training now. All yours, Christine. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Maureen, for that introduction. So let's go ahead and get started. So of course, today's session is going to be a webinar where we're going to cover the rollover process for the one-to-one application process. That's where you have one application with one funding source. And so we're going to discuss how to update your funding sources, how to clone your current application, as well as how to make adjustments to any sections and questions required for your new application process. And so, of course, any of you who are administrators on the site, global admins, who are responsible for creating the application forms from year to year, cycle to cycle, those are the ones that are going to be benefiting from this training today. So of course, the topics we're going to be talking about, we're going to go over, first of all, how to update your funding sources. That's usually the first step, is updating your funding sources. Then once you do that, you would clone your application form. We'll talk about a little bit of a change if you've been with us for a while about the application contact. And then some of the key areas you're going to want to look at when you clone that application form, what clones over, and what are some things you want to make note of, just some best practices of things to double check. And then we'll take a quick break, and Maureen will answer any questions. If any questions came up during that first part of the session, then Maureen will go ahead and answer those questions. And then after the break, we'll get into adding and removing questions and sections, as well as reviewing and updating your post-acceptance and acceptance sections if you're using those. For our grant users, so of course today's session is going to be the same process for grants and scholarships, but we do have a little bit of a change, a little bit of a area that is a little different with some of our grant users. And so that's where if you have an LOI and an RFP where you build two applications, two one-to-one applications, and then you're using that update link. So we're just going to touch on that a little bit for our grant users. And then we'll go over reviewing your email templates, your evaluation setup, reviewing that, and then looking at your ad hoc reports, some of the key things you're going to want to double check before going live. And then of course, before you go live, we always recommend that you test. We'll give you some little ideas on how to do that as well. And then we'll close with the final Q&A, and Maureen will answer any final questions that came through. So again, like we said, this is a one-to-one application process. So when using an application, well, one-to-one is when you have one application and just one funding source tied to it. There's only one fund that's going to fund the awards for that specific program if you have awarding linked to it. So the next session we'll be getting into the one-to-many So we won't get into that today. We'll just be focusing on the one-to-one. Now we will be doing this with scholarships and grants, but we'll predominantly be using our scholarship site with the exception of that area that I talked about in the topics there for the LOI and the RFP. So let's go ahead and get started with the application rollover. So the application rollover is the process that's used from year to year, or if you have multiple cycles, you're using an application form and maybe you have a spring cycle and a fall cycle. So it's the same process no matter what it is that you're rolling over. And an application rollover is when you're taking an existing application that you have built, and then that application is just something each year or each cycle you need a new application for applicants to apply to. So you're going to be cloning that, creating a whole new application process to begin your new period. So when you do the rollover process, since you're cloning an existing application, pretty much everything from that existing application is going to roll over. So when you clone it, you're going to get general information. You're going to get all the sections and questions, the pre-qualification questions, your text tabs, evaluation setup, which would be your tasks and your committees. If there was ad hoc reports on that application form, those are all going to clone over. So you can pretty much get a good idea of what exactly clones with that. So the first step in a rollover process and in updating your process with the rollover process is to work on your funding sources, because when you create an application, you tie it to the funding source. So it's always best to start with the build of that funding source. Now there's two ways you can do this. Some of our clients in the past have had, it's the same funding source, so they just take and disconnect the old application and reconnect a new application. A couple of years ago, we did do what's called a 360 fund view now. So of course, if you disconnect an application and add a new application to that same funding source, which I'll go over this, of course, it's going to disconnect it from the application form. So if you do that, you can, but now that we have the 360, we kind of recommend that you just create a whole new funding source. We've got the cloning ability, so you can just create that whole new funding source. So I'm just going to kind of show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to go out to the site here. And so the first step, of course, is your application funds. So whenever you have an application process, you have your application form that you build, and then along with that, you have a funding source tied to it, just one application fund. So that funding source, of course, if you want to keep track of your awarding, you can by just removing the application. But what I want to show you is if I go in here, so this is an application, and anytime you remove an application from the funding source, so right now I'm going to go in on this application because I've got data here. And when I go to my awards screen, so here I can see all my applicants. I can still work the applicants. The applicants can still access their application form. However, here with the awards section, this awards always looks at the funding source that's linked to this application fund. So if you were to take the funding source and disconnect the application, the award data that here, this is a one fund, the award data is no longer going to show. So what do I mean? So you can see it showing here in this application process. But if I go to the fund, so I'm going to go to manage application funds. And here in the manage application funds, of course, is where we build the funds. When we build the fund, we tie the application to it. So if I go into that same fund that I just pulled up, that 2022, this one here, this was the fund, we have what's called that 360 process. So with the 360, you can go here and go to manage applicants, and you can see by looking at this graph here, you can click in, you can see all the applicants that applied to that application form that was tied to that fund. You can see the award history in the 360, and you can see what application they used to apply to it. Automated scoring is going to be, so this manage applicants, the automated scoring and the thank you letters is all looking at the data in the application, not the data to the fund. So this awards here is showing the awards across all applications in the fund setup. Now, if you take the fund details and you were to edit, so let's say I have a new application process. I'm going to create a new application, but I want to keep my funds static. I don't want to keep creating a fund every year. If I come in here and disconnect this application, let me just see here. What one do I want to pick? Let's just pick this one. I disconnect it. It's going to give me this data warning. So what it's telling me is I'm going to have data issues. So I'm going to click OK. And so what happens now, if I was to go to save this, let's do save. And now I've removed that application form. So I'm now telling the system that the application form that's tied to this fund is this specific application. So you're going to notice when I go to manage applicants, it's not going to give me any data because that application doesn't have any applicants. If I go to automated scoring, because that's where that is built, it's per application, as well as thank you letters, that's per application as well. But the awarding, of course, it's still going to show me the awarding for that fund because awarding is always based on the funding source. Hopefully this is making sense. I know it's kind of confusing. If I go back to that original application, you're going to see when I go back into that 2022 application, I think it's this one. I lost track of it now that the fund's not there. And I go to the awards, you're now going to see there's no awards there. So I can't get to the awards from the application's viewpoint. So are you following me? It's disconnected from the application. It's still in the fund. The fund keeps that history, but I no longer can do anything with my awards. So if you do that, if you just keep rolling the fund and keeping that fund and keep rolling the applications, you can do that. But just know you don't want to do it until you're completely done with your awarding on the application because you can't go in, you can't make an adjustment to an award. So like you grant users, maybe you've awarded $25,000 in grant funds and the program's going along and they come back and maybe you're just giving partial payments through your program. They come back and say, hey, I don't need this full amount. You've show that you've awarded them 25,000. Since it's disconnected from that application, you can't go back in and make that adjustment to make it. Maybe they only needed 15,000. You can't make that adjustment to that award because it's no longer attached to the application form. So if you do that, you want to make sure all your award process is done as well as your post-acceptance and acceptance sections. Those are all completed as well because in the Manage Applications Fund, whenever you change the application, it's also going to, I'll show you here. It gets a little bit harder to find it when I switch them around. There it is. This right here, this post acceptance link is going to go to the new application. So you're not going to want to give them that link. They can still access it if they have access to their application from the back end. You just can't use this link any longer. Okay, so that's just some caveats to keep track of. Okay, so that out of the way, I'm going to do with my process, I'm going to create a whole new fund. That way I don't have to worry, did I award everybody? Is all the awarding complete? Maybe you have 2 cycles in a year and so that you've got that overlap. So in those scenarios, I would recommend to create a whole new fund, especially since now we have that cloning capability. So I'm going to go back out to manage application funds and start my process. Actually, before I do that, I do want to put this back to the right application form so that we have the data correct on it. Save and exit. Okay, so now Got that repaired. We can go back to manage application funds and start with a whole new process for the year. So now we're starting with a whole new process. So what I'm going to do, I have my application fund out there already. So I have this one. This was the funding source that is funding my program. This is where the pool of money's coming from, but I'm just going to go ahead and create a whole new one. And so with our new cloning capability, if you go over here and hit the clone button, it's going to make an exact replica of that application form. So all I need to do, since this is going to be my 2024, is just come in here and do my adjustment to the name. And this is going to be a whole new funding source. So if I want to know what was awarded for this fund, for the 2024 fund, then I will be able to see that, of course, without any issues in the application as well as in the fund. So now I'm going to hit clone, but I'm not, and clone and edit. If I hit clone, it's just going to create a copy and I can't make any adjustments, but I'm going to do clone and edit. And so here is that new fund. So of course, here is where I have my funding opportunity. I have my name. I don't have an application to link to it yet, so we'll leave that blank. You'll see where we do that. And then over here, you just fill in all the data for the new period. If you need to update your descriptions, you can go down in here, update the descriptions as needed. If it's a new email signature, maybe you have a new program manager or scholarship manager, you can go in here and make the adjustments. And then also here, you don't need to worry about this because as soon as you link it to an application, it's going to pick up the date based on the application form. So now I'm just going to review everything. I want to make sure here you can see it also brought over my contact for that. If you have multiple departments and you have multiple contacts for your save and exit, it's going to tell me it's been updated. I'm going to click OK. And now I have my new funding source. And so now I'm ready to start building out my new application form. So that brings us to the next topic here. And that is going to be the cloning of the application. So when we clone an existing application, so as soon as I hit that clone button here in a minute, as soon as I hit that button, it's going to make an exact copy of that application form. And these are the items that are going to clone over: your general information, your sections and questions, request instructions, submit messages, text tabs, collaborator instructions, any assigned application funds. Of course, this is a one-to-one, so you won't have any assigned application funds. But automated scoring, reviewer tasks, committees, email templates, ad hoc reports, all of that's going to clone. It's going to make an exact copy for you. So that's what's nice. So let's talk about how to clone an application. We've got our funding source built. So now we're going to go home. And my application that I'm cloning, the process that I'm using, it's the same process every year. I just maybe need to make a few little tweaks to the application form. So I have my application. So I'm going to come up here, clone existing application. It's an application that's already out there. I'm going to hit clone it. And then what's the template? I'm going to use my application form I had from last year. So this is the one I built last year. And so now all I have to do, as soon as I did that, you'll notice it populated everything with the same data that was in the old application. So this is where you need to make your adjustments. This is where, before you save this, you want to make your appropriate adjustments. So here, of course, it's not going to be the 2023. It's going to be my 2024 application. I'm just going to put this in here, so that kind of brings it to the front of the line. That's why I do that for my demo purposes, so it's not hard to find the application, of course. And then you just make any adjustments. One thing you want to be looking at is your dates, making sure you make adjustments to those. Now, remember when I did the fund, I said you didn't need to do anything with the academic year. So this says auto. And so what it's going to do, it's going to go out to your administration tab. There's an academic, manage academic years, where it looks at your beginning of your fiscal year and the end of the fiscal year. And depending on where these dates fall in, that's what it's going to automatically pick up as the award year. Now, if it's a different year than what the system picks up, then you can come in here, hit this drop down and adjust it. So maybe I'm doing the application process in 23-24, but the awarding isn't until 24-25. I can actually click the 24-25, and that's the award year period it's going to pick up. But I'm just going to let the system default. And so this is the awarding period. It's also going to put on that funding source. So I'm just going to put what's my begin date of the application. So this is important because notice it picked up the start date and end date from my last application process. So I'm going to put this starts, let's start it today. And then we'll end it the end of the year. And then of course the time. So this time, if I have 12 a.m., that's saying the morning of the 31st, not the evening, 12 a.m. So if I wanted to do the evening, maybe give them until midnight that day, I would want to make sure and go in here and make it 11 to 11 p.m. Okay, so that's at the end of the day. But if I had 12 a.m., then that's of course going to be 12 a.m. Okay, so let's do 11:30. And so if I wanted to do midnight, then of course I wouldn't make this 12/31. I would make it, of course, January 1st of 2025 at midnight. So that's just something to keep remember. This deadline date is the time on the date that you put there. Okay. So the next thing, just kind of look through your URLs, make sure nothing's changed with that. The reply to person, if that person is no longer the key person, that is the reply to. So that reply to comes in on email templates. If there's a reply to field, that's who it's going to when the applicants see an email and it populates it, that's the email it's going to be there. So if this isn't the person that's to be the reply to person, then you do want to make sure and make your adjustments. So these are just the key things that you're going to want to be looking at in regards to changes and updates from one application form to another since you're cloning. If you have form cost associated, you're going to want to make sure if it's a different amount, pick that up. The contact. So this is the application contact. So in the past, you used to have to create the application form. Then once you cloned it, you created it, you would have to go back into the application general information and add the contact. So now we have, as soon as you clone it, the ability to adjust that contact person. So when we say contact person, that's the application contact. That's the individual in your organization that if you have the settings set in the site settings to notify the application contact every time someone submits, if there's an award process and an applicant denies their award, they click that denial button, an email goes to the application contact automatically. In email templates, if you're using contact, first name, last name, address, email address, etc., that says contact on it, and you put that field in your email templates, this is what it's looking at. So if you don't populate this field, those emails won't go to the contact person, of course, and if you have them in a merge field on an email template, they will not be populated. So always look at your contact email address and make sure that that is the same person. And if it is, then that's fine. Otherwise, you can click add and then go ahead and enter a new person, and then the system will find that new person and add them accordingly. Okay, but that's just something I wanted to point out. That contact email address is now here when you're cloning it. And then of course, pre-qualifications, if that's still active, make sure that's marked. And then just go through all the little toggles and make sure everything's adjusted according to the new process. look at all of your text fields. So this one here, I see here, I have a physical date, so I need to make sure and change that. And now I'm ready to hit save and exit. This next step is very important because this is where you're going to link the correct fund. So first of all, what it's doing is, since I cloned it from that 2023 application, the 2023 application was linked to this funding source because I didn't remove it. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to unassign it because it's no longer assigned to this application. But what I do need to do is I need to tell the system what's the directly associated fund for this specific application. What's the fund that posts it to the site? What's the fund that the applicants see when they are searching for applications to apply to? What's that posting fund that we created? So in a one-to-one, it's always a posting fund. So I'm going to go ahead here, and that's always the fund that you're awarding, of course, in a one-to-one process. And look for that new funding source that I just created. There it is. And then I'm going to hit here, save fund details. Now, if I don't do this step, if I bypass it and hit cancel, then I will have to go back into my managed funds, find that fund, and link the application that I just created. This keeps you from having to go in and out and back and forth. It's going to automatically do all that for you. So I'm going to hit save fund details, and it's going to say it's been associated successfully. I'm going to say okay. And now you'll see I have a new application, and there's my funding source tied to it. Okay. So now some key things. Once everything's been set up, then the next step, of course, is going to be looking at the different elements that have cloned over. We'll touch on some of them in the second half of our session, but right now we're going to talk about some of the key ones that clone over. Some of those being if I can get to the right slide here, the collaborator instructions, the general information, your prequal, your request instructions, your submit messages, and your text tabs. Those are all things you're going to want to look at. So we're just going to kind of slowly touch on those real quick here before that we take a quick break. So how do I get to all those areas? So here's my new application form. I'm going to open it up. And under application settings, we'll start there. And in application settings, the general information, just so you know, we'll get into sections and questions after the break, but general information is that exact same screen that we were in with the build of the application form. So here is that same data, see the data that it picked up. And then here, another thing, if you are using pre-qualification questions, so what I'm looking for is, this is where you're going to make your edits. Do you need to remove pre-qualification questions? Do you need to add pre-qualification questions? So this is where you're going to do that. You want to do this now before you go live. So look at your pre-qualifications. Do you have dates in your questions? Do you have dates in the denial message, things that you need to change? Request instructions to applicants, if you're using those request sections, do you have dates in those? Those are the instructions to the applicant so they know how to request someone to complete that section. So if you have any date data in that, just kind of read through it, make any adjustments, and be sure to click save when you're done. The submit application message. Maybe you physically typed someone's email address in there. If you physically typed it and that person's no longer the individual, you're going to want to make sure and remove that. Date information, you're going to remove that, and be sure to click save. Text tabs, one thing you do need to do if you are using text tabs and you have activated your text tabs, and this is the same for all 5 of them, whenever you clone an application form, you do want to go in and check your text tabs. So of course, here's mine. You can see I'm way off on those dates. So you do want to go ahead and put your new dates in there and then make all your adjustments. And another thing you want to do before you hit save is notice this little publish button. Every time you clone, they will no longer be published. You do have to go in on all your text tabs that you're using and make sure and click yes, because if you do not do that, these text tabs will not show up on the new application process. It turns it off when it clones it. So you want to go back in, make your adjustments, and then be sure and click yes. It's kind of a safety feature that kind of forces you to make sure you've changed those dates. And if you haven't changed the dates and you haven't gone in and edited it and marked published, then it's not going to show that to your applicants. If you don't change the dates and mark publish, it's still going to show it, but hopefully when you open this up, that'll be your flag. Okay, I need to check these. Okay, and then of course, make sure you hit save. And then once you hit save, that'll be present for your applicants. Collaborator instructions, if you're using the collaboration functionality. So you grant users, if you're using collaboration and you have those instructions, just go through and just make sure you haven't entered any date. Same with the proxy. If you have proxies, make sure you go in on those instructions. If you have instructions there, make sure and adjust those as well. So those are some of the key things before we take a break that you want to go in and just confirm that nothing's changed, no new data needs to be entered in there. So I will go ahead and stop here for now, and then we'll turn the presentation over to Maureen. I see there were a few questions, so let her have the floor and she can answer those.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, first question. Can you remind me of the benefit of using text tabs? Since we're already on the topic of text tabs, see, the text tabs is like additional information that you want to provide to your applicants while they are working on the application. Sometimes you have some FAQs or certain links or requirements that are needed for your applicants to come in and work on the application, such as guidelines. So those sort of things you can place in separate text tabs. Maybe FAQs could be in one text tab, maybe the guidelines could be in another text tab. So it's not necessary that you use up all 5 of them. Maybe you can use one, maybe you could use 2. It completely depends on how many or how much of information you'd like to furnish to your applicants during the application process. I hope that is helpful, Rhonda. Okay. Another question is, and this is a question that keeps coming up with all of our attendees or people who register for our webinars is, do we get a recording of our webinar? Yes, absolutely. After the next 24 hours, that is by 2 p.m. or so tomorrow, you should all receive a copy of today's webinar, a recording in your inbox. Please look out for those recordings. You should be able to get those as well. Another question is, I cannot see the application during cloning, right? When you're using, the question here is, I cannot see the application that I want to pick from the list of applications to use as a template to clone my new application. Well, one of the reasons is, Christine, can we go to the general settings, general information screen? So if you scroll down right towards the bottom with all the settings, there is a publish option there. See, publish. Now this is internal publishing. This is not going to publish your application for your applicants altogether. This is just going to be available when you're cloning your applications. All right. Okay. All right. So if that published option is a no, you might not see this application in the list of applications that you're trying to clone from. Okay. So make sure that it is a yes, and it is not going to allow your applicants to come in and apply. This is just internal use. Okay. Don't confuse this with the publish on the fund setup screen. Another question that we have is,
I want
yes,
to jump in
Christine,
there
please.
too. And another reason why you may not see an application to clone is if it's been archived. If you archive an application, it will no longer show in that listing as well.
Thank you, Christine. Yes, thank you for the additional information. Okay. So make sure that when you are going to move into the application cloning process, 24 hours prior, please move that archived application into the active list. It takes approximately 24 hours for your archive application to move into the active folder and vice versa. So just be prepared. That's all I'll say. Thank you so much, Christine. That is very helpful. Okay. I have one other question that says, if no questions were made on the individual text tabs, do we still need to make the published to a yes? No, Leonora, but it's a good idea to go back and check, because sometimes you might have dates, right? Dates, times, some other information that might need to be updated. Just have a look at those pre-qualification questions and see if it is a yes or no. If it's a no and you might want to publish it, please go ahead and publish it. I
And
have,
I apologize,
yes,
Maureen, I'm going to jump in again. I am going to give a
please, please.
clarification there.
Yes,
So if
yes.
you have a prior application and you clone that prior application and it had text tabs in it,
Hmm.
when you clone that application, it will not publish those text tabs until you go in and select that yes. Even if there's no changes to make, if you don't go in and do that, they will not be present on the site.
All right, Christine. Thank you so much. Anything else, Christine? I have just one more question. Okay. All right. There is just one other question is, how do I preview my application as a whole now that I've cloned it? You want to have a look at a blank application copy? Go to the application home screen. Can we go to the home screen, Christine?
If they want to preview it after it's
Yes.
been built, yes, okay.
Yes. Okay. Just a blank copy is what they want to see, I believe, because at this point of time, they have not tested the application. So there we see, as Christine is showing, there's a preview button next to the application that you just cloned. There is a delete, there's a preview. Click on the preview option and you'll not just be able to see a blank copy, you can also get a printed copy of the same. See, you can download the copy of the application as well. Okay, Christine, I think I've answered the rest of the questions in the Q&A box. I'll continue answering any of your questions that you have during this
Okay,
session. So,
perfect.
okay, Christine. Thank you,
Okay,
everyone. Bye-bye.
yes, thank you so much, Maureen, for answering those questions. So let's go ahead and continue on now. So we've covered some of those little key areas in the application build. So now let's kind of move to adding questions and sections as well as removing them. So we'll kind of get into those areas now. So let's talk about adding questions first. So of course, before you go live, you want to make sure and add any new questions you have to add to that application form. So if your process is adjusted a little bit, maybe you've got some more questions you want to ask. Maybe last year you realized you didn't ask some questions that you wanted that were pertinent. So this is the stage before you go live. You can do this. You can create those questions that need to be created. Now, in order to create the questions, it's if you're using a master template. So today I'm just going to do it within the application form because a time limit, of course, we don't want to go over time. We do have another training coming up later on this year on how to use a master template, how to push questions from a master template. But anytime you have a master template, so if you're a grant user and you're using the agency profile, or if you're a scholarship user and you're creating global ad hoc reports, you have to have a master template. So any question that is built in an application form has to be built in the master template and pushed down if you want to use it in reports later on. If it's not in the master template, it will not allow you to use that in any reporting functionality, as well as if it's a part of a agency profile for you grant users, it won't allow you to add that to the agency profile because the agency profile is built off of a master template. So anytime you're adding questions and you have that master template, you're using it, or maybe in the future you decide, oh, I want to maybe start doing global ad hoc reports across multiple application forms. If you don't build the question in the master template first, then it won't be available for you to use in those global ad hoc reports across multiple application forms. So that's the caveat. And of course, we do have in this guide the link to the Zendesk guides that show you how to use a master template and how to push the functionality. So that's just one thing I want to make sure you are aware of, that if you are doing master template and ad hoc reports and agency profiles, build it in the master template and push it down. Okay, and so when you're in the master template, of course, I have my master template, but I'm going to go ahead and go in the application to build a question in the master template. It's the exact same way. It's just you're doing it in the master template and you're going to push it down to your application. So to add questions and sections, you do want to go to application settings on that application form. And then here I'm in the sections and questions area. And so here I have my sections. And then of course, to add a section, you just come up here and click add. And then here, if you have a section you're cloning within, you can do that. Or you can come up here and create a whole new section. Just hit create section, and then it'll open up the field to create a new section. Same with questions. Once you create a section, you go in and build those questions. Or if you have a section already built, you just click on the name. And then here is where you've got your questions. And then you just come up here, click add question. Once you click the add question, you can plug it in where you want to put it. And then that question is built and it's ready to go for your applicant. So it's that simple. But like I said, I'm building it in my application form right now, but do it in the master template and then push it down to the application once you've got the application built. Okay, so that's removing questions. Now let's talk about removing questions. So let me go back out here. And removing questions can be a little different. And some things to think about is sometimes you might remove a question and maybe you're just removing it for this year's process. Maybe it's something you needed last year, you don't need this year, but maybe in the future you might need it. So if you delete a question, don't delete it from the master template if you're using the master template, but you can delete it from the application form and it'll no longer be there. But once you delete a question, it's gone forever. And the reason we say don't do it in the master template, because if you delete a question in the master template, all the reports you built that maybe had that question will be broken, okay, if in the master template. But in the application form itself, you don't need that question. You're never going to need it again going forward as you're cloning. You're not going to need it, then go ahead and delete it. If it's a question that you may need in the future, then just exclude it. So we're going to talk about how to delete and exclude today. Same with sections. Sections. If you delete a section, you totally delete that section, then what's going to happen is when you delete the section, it's going to be gone forever. So if it's a section that maybe you need to bring back, then just exclude that section. Just make it inactive, active and inactive with those sections. Don't remove them completely. Just make them inactive or active. Same with the master template. If you remove a section from the master template, you will break all your reports or anything that was using it in the past. Okay, so master template pretty much just keeps everything. Current applications, you can pick and choose what you want to leave in there and what you want to take out. Okay, so now let's go to the site and talk about how to, so here's sections. I'm going to go back to sections and start there. So maybe it's a section, maybe I no longer need these attachments. So what I can do is I can just come here. Maybe next year I might need them. I don't want to delete this completely. So I'm just going to uncheck it here. I just took that checkbox out and hit save. And that just makes it so it's inactive and it's not present on that application process. If I decide I want to bring it back, and of course, once you went live, you might not want to do that because of course all those applicants that completed their application form, submitted it, are now going to have issues because it's going to show on their dashboards because you've activated it. But this is a new process. I don't need this for this year, so I'm just going to deactivate it. And if you want, you can even use these arrows. Sometimes I do that just to get it out of the way so that I don't come in here on accident or somebody else and it's like, what's this? Why is this got an attachment? Something else you don't want to make adjustments to is your XML names. So we've had clients in the past put dates in their XML names. That will keep from being able to run reports across those fields because you've changed the XML names. If you change the XML names in questions, they won't be able to import that data and you won't be able to use that in your master template reporting, your global ad hoc reports. So that's something, once this section XML has been created, that name, don't go in and adjust it. The section name though, you can make a change. So maybe in the section name, because that's what the applicant's seeing, you could maybe put, I know a lot of our grant users, they have multiple years. They want to put the 22, 23 prior year. They want to put the 2023 current year. They want to have fiscal data on maybe their 24, 25 going forward. Put it in the section name. Don't change that section XML name. Okay. Now, if I want to delete this section completely, I can come over here, hit this little delete. I'm not going to do it, but you will get a warning that says, are you sure you want to do this? And say yes, and then it will delete that from that application. Delete it from the application, it's gone forever. And then you will have to, but if, of course, if you left it in your master template, which is what you're supposed to do, and if you have a master template, you accidentally delete it, you can go up to your master template and push it down. So that's another use that's always nice for the master template. Okay, questions. If I go in, say I go into the personal information, maybe. Okay, and now I'm on the question area. If I have a column here, it says excluded. So what excluded does, it's just like making it inactive, but it's there where you can bring it back. If I want to exclude a question, all I need to do is select it over here and then look at the excluded column. So this question's already excluded. So if I come up here to more options and hit exclude include, that right here, if I select that, it's going to now include that question. It's going to do the opposite of what that column says. So this one, of course, if I click it, it would be included. I want to keep it excluded, so I don't want to select it. But if maybe I want to come down here, go to this message field, this message title, maybe I don't want that anymore. I can come up here, hit exclude include, click yes, and then that question will no longer be on their application form. But of course, when I clone this, next year when I clone it, I have it, and then all I have to do is just come in here, do the select, include, exclude up here, and then once it's no longer saying yes, then it will be part of the application form. So of course, if you ever have an application, you're like, I know that question's out there, why am I not seeing it? Always come here and just see if it's been excluded maybe. That could be a situation there. Now, of course, if I want to delete a question, if I want to delete it, I want to select the question I want to delete. And you can exclude and include multiple questions too, just so you know. And the same with the delete, you can delete multiple ones too. But remember, once you delete, it's gone forever from that application form and you won't be able to get it back. Okay, so if I select it, then I would hit delete here, which I'm not going to, but if I hit delete, then I'd get a warning and then it would delete that question from this application form. And I'm just going to bring this back because I don't want that excluded in real life. I think I hit it twice. Okay, and now it's no longer excluded. Okay, so that's the difference between excluding and deleting of your questions. Now, when looking at sections, another thing you're going to want to look at that's important is when you clone an application form, it's going to pick up the deadline date over here. It's going to pick up this deadline date of the deadline date of the application form. So it's very important that before you go live, you look at your sections and look at your deadlines and make sure that that's the correct deadline dates for those sections, especially your post acceptance and your acceptance sections, because those usually come after the application process. So the applicants wouldn't be able to access this if I was to go live right now. December 31st comes around, maybe they're not doing these acceptances, of course, until maybe next year. So these due dates, I do need to make sure and go in and adjust those. So to do that, you come over here to the edit button here. This is the edit. Anytime you see that little pencil, that means edit. I need to click on that and then just come down here and make sure I change the date to the correct date. So this one isn't going to be due until after they get awarded. So they'll probably be awarded February 28th of 2025. They have to complete that section, and then always make sure to hit save and exit. Okay. And then also on sections, something else you're going to want to make sure of is if you do need to edit a section, maybe the instructions, you want to look at those text fields there and just make sure you didn't put any date information in those either. Okay, so that's how do you edit your application just like you're creating a new one. Pretty much if you're adding questions, removing questions, that's how you would do that. And that's something you're going to want to do as part of the process. Okay, so now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to talk about something with our grant users. So some of the grant users out there have a two-step process. They have two application forms. The first application is what they call their letter of intent. So the letter of intent is the application where they're making that determination of whether or not they're eligible to continue with the program application process. And then the second application is the actual application once they've gotten the approval. So if you're using that process and you have where they have the section and they're clicking that application link, one quick thing we want to make sure you do, because tends to be something that some of our clients forget to do, is when you're a grant user and you're doing this process, it's not all grant users, just if you have this two-step process where you have the two applications. I'm going to go to my grant site here. I have my two applications built. I've already tied my funds to them. So you're going to build an application for each process. Of course, you're going to clone from last year. And so here I have my application, my letter of intent, and then I also have my actual application that they're going to apply to. So remember, in your process, if you're using that process, the applicants are coming to this application form, you're approving them and then having them return to this application form. And when they return to that application form, if you're using this process, you'll know what this is. If you're not, then you can always ask for a process review to find out about it. So when you're building that application and you're in the application settings, the applicant, once you've approved them, you have this set to appear on a certain status. Once you've approved them, then they return to their application form. They go to this section. When they go to this section, they see it says approved to submit full proposal, and then they have that little link. If you remember, they have that little link. They hit the click here, and then that link, depending on what you've set it as to happen, will direct them to that second application form. So what some of our users tend to do is they forget that once they've created the new rollover, they've created their new application forms, they forget to go into this application settings from the back end, open up this question, and change the application that is the next application that they're going to be pushed to. So when you come here, it'll be blank. The applicant will hit click here and nothing's happening. And then they contact you and say, hey, I can't get to it. And then you're like, oh, I forgot to create the link. So whenever you create a new application for your new process, you do want to come in here, select the application that they're to be pushed to, and then make sure, maybe you change whether it's going to apply them automatically and import or just apply. You want to make sure to make that adjustment and then hit save and exit. Then that link will work for them. So that's just one little caveat we wanted to make sure our grant users were aware of if you have that two-step process. Okay, so that was for the LOI to RFP, letter of intent to request for program, or maybe a second grant application like I have. That's the actual application they're applying for. Okay, now some other things we want to talk about, just a few other little items here, is in regards to the evaluation setup. So when you clone an application form, the evaluation process all clones as well. So you're going to want to go into your application under the evaluation tab and confirm your reviewer task cards. You can see there's your tasks. Do you want to make adjustments to those tasks? Maybe you want to remove questions. Maybe you want to add questions. Maybe you want to change the name. So those task cards that you've created, they've rolled over. They've come over with the rollover. You can come here and hit create edit, And same as with an application form, those questions, you can add a question or you can delete a question. Okay, so you can come in and do that. If you have dates in any of this data, you're going to want to make sure and change that by clicking on the question, going in and changing the data here in the text field. Again, don't change XML. Okay, that's important that you don't do that. Report column name, you can, but XML do not change. Committees, if you had committee members, all of those committee members that were on your prior process will be here. So of course, if you have that committee, you're going to want to make sure and go in and make adjustments to your committees so that that has been done. Also, automated scoring. If you're using automated scoring, maybe you have some scores that you need to make adjustments to. Go into that funding source and make adjustments to the scoring for that. If you need to add one, you can, or go ahead and you can delete and remove any you no longer need. Okay. Also, you're going to want to make sure and go into your email templates. So your email templates are going to be here in the notification center. Excuse me, I had a tickle in my throat. So you're going to want to go into the notifications here. And again, look at your email templates. And in your email templates, just open them up. So for instance, this one, if I open it up, I'm going to look at it. But guess what I did? I actually physically typed a date here. So I need to make sure anywhere in my email templates, if I physically typed dates, I need to make sure that I go in and make that adjustment to that specific template. So that's something you're going to want to look at, especially if you're a new admin. Maybe you had an old admin, they're no longer with you, they're now somebody new. You might want to go in and just, one, get familiar with all those, but two, make sure that they didn't go in and type something in there so that when the applicant does get that email, that it does have the correct data in it. And then of course, just make sure to hit the update here to save that change that you made. So that's with the email templates. The other thing that rolls over is going to be ad hoc reporting. So with your ad hoc report, some things that you do want to make note of is ad hoc reports is going to make an exact copy from the application you just cloned it from. So of course, if you remove a question from your application form, you've deleted it completely, not excluded, but deleted it, you will need to go into the reporting database and make sure to update that so the system can clear it for the specific application form. So what do I mean? So if I go into Manage Reports, under Ad Hoc Reports, here's all my reports. So you can see it made an exact copy of the reports I had. They all stayed there. I don't have to recreate them, which is nice. But maybe I deleted a question. Maybe I have here I have a question in this specific form. I've deleted it from the application. So guess what? This is gonna, maybe this report may not run effectively because it's looking for that question. It's like, where's it at? Just to be on the safe side, it's always good to come up here and just hit recreate reporting database. It's gonna clear all that stuff in the background and give you clean slates for anything that you've deleted or removed and made adjustments to. Okay, so that's pretty much everything in regards to what you need to look for when you clone, adjustments you need to make to your application forms. So the next thing we want to talk about before we close, I know we're going a little bit here, but is how to test your application form. So of course, if you have multiple applications and all those applicants are coming in, they're coming to your site, everybody has access to your site. As soon as you publish an application and that date is within range, the applicants can apply to it. So how do you test it? Maybe I have a live site and I want to be able to test it. If you're not live and applicants don't have access to the site, then you can just go in and test yourself without giving the URL, of course, to your applicants, but whoever has that URL can access it. But if you are live and you want to be able to test your application, you can unpublish your funding source so that no one can get to it, and then invite yourself using the application invitation process. Now, to invite yourself, you do have to have an applicant email address, an applicant profile on the system. So you would want to create that first. But then what you can do is come into the site. And we do have trainings on this. I'm not going to get into too much detail of all the bells and whistles with the application invitation. But what you're going to want to make sure and do is on your application fund, make sure it's not published. So if I come here, when I say not published, this one here, I want to make sure that it doesn't say published. It says published no. So that's good. Nobody can see it. Nobody can access it. Then what I can do is in the administration, create yourself an applicant profile using a personal email address. You can't use your same one as your admin, of course, but you can use a different one. And with an applicant login, and then go to home, go home, and then open up this application. And then under the notifications is a process called application invitation. And this allows you to invite applicants to private application forms. And that's what the status of this is right now. It's private. Now, in order to invite someone to an application form, it has to be an active application, meaning the deadline date can't be passed and the start date needs to be within the current range. So if you're not sure, you can just go back in here. I can go to application settings. I can go into my general information and then just confirm, okay, it started with today's date. So it's going to let me invite this person. And of course, December 31st of this year hasn't happened. So I can go ahead and invite somebody to this. I'm going to invite myself. So I'm going to go back into that application invitation under notifications here, go into application invitation, and I'm going to find myself. I can filter on my email address if I want and search. There I am. I'm just going to have to select me, hit this arrow. This is where you put all the assigned applicants. So, and then I can hit save. And then I have a process. It's going to say, are you sure? And with my application invitation process, which again, that's more details, but you can get online. I have it set that as soon as I invite somebody, it starts the application automatically, and it's sitting in their My Applications tab. So if you invited yourself, all you got to do is log in as an applicant, go to your My Applications tab. You'll see the application sitting there waiting for you to complete. Or I'm the admin, so of course I have access to the back end, so I can just go to Manage Applications. But it's always good to test from the applicant's perspective instead of doing this. This is just if you want a quick look at something. You can see here now I have an application started for me. I can actually go in and view my dashboard and complete it. But like I said, it's better to complete it from the applicant's perspective because sometimes things work and function and you see things as an admin that you wouldn't see as an applicant. For instance, when I say you see things, I'm seeing some of the sections that come after the application process because I'm the admin and I haven't deactivated those yet. And that's something too, if you're going to test, make sure you test the post acceptance and acceptance sections as well. Keep those active. Some of you turn them off when you go live, but when you're testing, turn them on so that you can at least see how they look as well. Okay, so that's just a quick way of how to test if you have live applications and you can't turn the site off so nobody has access to it. They have those URLs, they're going in, they're in the site, they may possibly see that, then you want to do an application invite. So that's it. So I'm going to turn the rest over to Maureen and let her answer the final questions, and then we can close the session. It's all yours, Maureen.
Thank you, Christine. Okay. Now that we are on the testing portion of the application, we have a question that says that I have completed the cloning of the application, sent myself an application invitation to test the application. But when I come in, I do not see any sections on my dashboard. So in such a case, please go back to the application sections and questions. Can we go to application settings, Christine? So this dashboard, as you're saying, might be blank, is what our attendee is saying. So if you see the activate section, there is a possibility that these sections are inactive. So make sure that these sections are active for you to be able to go in and test those changes. Okay. All right. That is one question. And okay, this question is from the previous portion of the application, the session. What is the difference between reply to and the contact? So under general settings, Christine, can we go back to general settings, please? Thank you. Okay, so as Christine has mentioned, there is a contact and there is a reply to. She has asked you to please go in and check. If you are the new admin, make sure that you add the contact. So what happens is the contact is just used in cases if there is a setting, of course, at the back end. Applicant submits the application, the application contact will receive an email, can receive an email, depending upon the setting. And other such triggers will shoot an email out to the application contact. That's the functionality of the application contact. Now, reply to is, even though most of your applicants might not reply to your emails, but let's just say you sent out an email and by default, someone clicks on reply to, right, from the inbox. When they click on reply to, that is the email address that they're going to see where the applicants will reach out to and send the emails. That's the difference between contact and reply to. All right, Christine, we have one important question from Lisa, of course. She has mentioned that there is an XML duplication that happens during section cloning.
Yes.
She wants to know, is there a way to avoid the XML duplication of names in the XML?
Yes. So there
Okay.
is a little trick I do. So of
Mm-hmm.
course, I think what you're saying is here's your XML name, and it's going to put this and then put this in the whatever you
Yes,
call it
twice.
in front of it again. So kind of what
Yes.
I do is I kind of do a two-step. I will take, so like this letter recommendation one, see if I can get it to do it. Sometimes I mess it up,
Mm-hmm.
is I will come up here and hit my clone and clone existing section. And I won't put the full name in it yet. What I will do is I'll say what's the application one-to-one, what's the section, letter of recommendation. But when I get here, I erase all this and
Oh,
I just put, I'll just put something short like an LR2 like this.
that's
And
nice.
then
Okay,
that
thank you.
way, whoops,
Mm-hmm.
LR2. That way what it does, and I'll just put that in all of this. I can't remember which one exactly it picks it up from at the top of my head here. Leave the XML name, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you want to put LR2024, I think, if I do something like that, because that's why it's duplicating, because it's looking at that name and then duplicating it again. And then what happens, I'm getting a little 24, is once I clone it, save and exit. Ah, that's right. You do have to do, it's making you do the XML name now. Okay. So you can adjust the XML name here now, looks like. Okay, so that's something we never had there before, I don't think, is the XML name there, Maureen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can
Okay.
hit save and exit. Might have just found something new.
Yes. Three
Okay,
fields is what I noticed.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so here,
Mm-hmm.
now, if I go in, I think that's what I wanted to change. I messed it up. I apologize, Lisa. I'm having one of those moments. Let me go back.
Not.
Let me start all over. I know exactly what I did. I know exactly what I did. Let's hit delete. And yes, okay. I just had a moment of brain lapse. So now let's go into clone. Hit clone existing. And then I just kind of do something like this, LR2. And then I do this. And then I do this, something very small. And then I hit save and exit. What's it giving me now? Oh, because I didn't select. I can go ahead and go in and do this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it here, let it create all those XMLs on all those questions, and then, okay, there's the XML. So now when I go in to look at all those questions, notice, see, now it makes them small and short. Okay, does that help you at all, Lisa?
Yes, I
Okay,
think it does help, Lisa. Is there,
okay,
because now we
so that's
have the
what I do. I
cloning of
just go
the.
in XML,
Mhm.
and then what I do is then I go back to my sections and questions and then make this. I don't need to do anything with the XML. I can just come here, I can edit, because it's made the questions. I can come in here, do the XML, and then name it what I want at this stage. And then here I can go into the section names and give it what I want as well. And it won't adjust the questions. So now it's made the name with like a little abbreviation or something like that. And then I can come here, hit save and exit, and make those little bit of adjustments. So that's just a little trick, okay? Just so you know. And so that way now it doesn't put a super long, it's got something, but not a super long extension on those question names. It's putting what it had before, but nothing super long. That's it. Okay. Is that, it looks like it answers your question, right, Lisa? Perfect. It's all yours,
Yes.
Marie. You can continue.
Yes, I think, yes, Christine, I think we have answered most of the questions. Ricardo, I have two questions from you. Normally, we pull reports from all of our sessions, so we do get the Q&A piece as well. Ricardo, I'll follow up with you in the email if that's okay with you. I might need a few clarifications for your questions, but I believe, Lisa, is that okay with you with the questions that we have answered since we are running short of time? Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, thank you, Christine. Really appreciate your, going that extra mile for this explanation. Really helpful to all of
Oh,
us.
no
I
worries. No
appreciate it.
worries there.
Yes,
So just
Ricardo.
sorry I had that little
Mhm.
blank for a moment there.
No, no, I'm sure
That's what's
everyone
happened. But
appreciates it.
thank you, Lisa, for your patience, and everyone else as well.
Absolutely. I do too, Christine. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So I'll hand it over back to you, Christine. All yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Maureen. And thank you everyone for being patient with the timing. And so, of course, this does conclude our session for today. And so the resources for the things that we've talked about, if you need more detail on how to do some of the steps that we don't have, of course, time to cover everything, you can go in. They are here. The click here should take you to the Zendesk areas that kind of go in more detail how to build some of the items out, like sections and questions and that sort of thing. And then, yes, and then I know Ricardo, that Maureen will answer your question in regards to some of those things as well with the new functionality that we just received. Okay, so that is all for today. So again, we do appreciate everyone taking time out of their busy schedules. And of course, if there's anything we talked about, like maybe if you're a grant user and you're not doing that two-step and you're interested, or maybe there's something else that we talked about that maybe you're interested in learning more about, feel free to enter a ticket on Zendesk and ask for a meeting with the client support specialist, and then they can meet with you in regards to going over some of your processes and seeing if it's something that would work for you. Okay, so everyone have a good day. Thank you so much, and goodbye.